Hello there ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's Alexander Hilly123 here and it's time for a new video. It is time today for my 10th and final video in my top 50 albums of the 1990s list. And for the last 2 or 3 months or so, I have been doing and talking about 5 albums per video, 50 to 46, 45 to 41, 40 to 36, etc, etc. And here we are finally today, my 10th and final video where I'm going to be detailing albums 5, 4, 3, 2 and that all important number 1. I've enjoyed doing these videos like I've said in every one I've done, but they're not getting many views. My channel down the years since I started on YouTube in 2006 has primarily been random insanity, football and video games, but I do love my music. I love talking about music, I love finding new music, and I love recommending new music. So if you have gotten into any new music because of these videos, then that would be absolutely fantastic, because you find something out of the blue and it can really have a big impact on your life. I know it has on mine, because this band right here, Porcupine Tree, it was back in 2007, 2008, I found them and I just got started on progressive rock. You know, I found so many bands from them, got onto Last.fm, started listening on YouTube, got a Spotify account, and around the time when between 17 and 19 is when I started to fall in love with tons of different music, and there had to be a catalyst, and I personally think these guys were the main one for me in that genre of music anyway. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to cut to the chase because this video could well be over 20 minutes. Thank you guys who have liked these videos. I know they're very long, but like I said, I love sharing music. After this video, we'll be back onto the video gaming hype, don't you worry. But anyway, album number 5 now, ladies and gentlemen. It is the debut album from the trip-hop trio Portishead and the album Dummy. And incredibly, in the 20 years that have now passed since this album, they've only made 2 other albums, incredibly. The self-titled second album, Portishead, and then the third album, Third, in 2008. Yes, they're not very good with album titles, but what they are good at is creating an atmosphere and making sure that when you listen to the album, you get those feels, ladies and gentlemen. This album runs in 49 minutes in length, produced by the band themselves, and released August 1994. This really started off, for a lot of people, the genre of trip-hop, which is basically sampling old hip-hop, or in this case, jazz. So you've got the hip-hop beats, but you've got the jazz, and you've got the beautiful female vocals. And all those things sound kind of contradictory to themselves, but it just works so well and effortlessly. Dummy, for me, is a near-flawless album, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. On, Sour Time, Strangers, It Could Be Sweet, Wandering Star, It's a Fire, Numb, Roads, Pedestal, Biscuit, and Glory Box. Not a bad song on there, but the one that I'm putting in the description box is Wandering Star. It's probably the most immediate song on the album, in my opinion. Probably the fastest as well. It's got these constant beeps throughout the song, and it sounds like it's in a hurry. And Beth's vocals are absolutely fantastic. Oh, it's just unbelievable. She's a big smoker and a big drinker, supposedly, Miss Beth Gibbons, and she's got a great personality within the songs. Always talking about sorrow and this lost love and stuff like this. Real heartache. But it just works so well, and if you've watched these videos back, you'll have realised there are not many female vocalists. I'm not really big on female vocals altogether. I've got a few that I have. I love Alanis Morissette's first album. And then there's like guest appearances from Sia, and I think her name's Martina Topley Bird or something like that. Music like Röyksopp, Massive Attack, 07, they all have guest female vocals. But that's the gist of it, really. That's the main female vocalists I listen to. There's probably a few others that I've forgotten about, but Beth Gibbons is number 1. And this album, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, it combines and fuses hip-hop beats with old-school jazz that it samples, with Beth's haunting vocals. I don't think I've said the word haunting very much during these videos, but I've got to say it for Beth. But yeah, the 3 albums that Portishead have made are all fantastic, but for me, Dummy is a trip-hop masterpiece, and if you want to just sit back, relax, to a chilled-out album that is dark and atmospheric, but Beth really carries this album. She does. But the production is fantastic as well. I don't really know what more to say, to be perfectly honest with you. It's a masterpiece. It's my 5th favourite album of the 1990s. It is dummy. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going forward to 1999, September 1999. Thank goodness this album just made the list, but it very nearly didn't, because the band's prior album from 1994 nearly did, at number 4. And if you're getting confused, well, I'll cut right to the chase. It is The Fragile by 9 Inch Nails, released in 1999. But originally, I had put 9 Inch Nails' second album, The Downward Spiral, in the list. But for me, The Fragile is Trent Reznor's masterpiece. Trent Reznor, the main man behind 9 Inch Nails, and down the years there have been so many different musicians and people in the band at the same time, it's unbelievable. But he is the main and only constant. The debut album from 9 Inch Nails was 1989's Pretty Hate Machine, which had all the elements of 9 Inch Nails in it, but it sounds dated when you hear it now in 2014, but it's still a strong album. But The Downward Spiral changed the whole game up. Grunge had arrived, and Trent Reznor had changed as a man, and he was going through, in the whole of the 90s, really a pretty dark time. And after The Fragile, he went into hibernation, and he wasn't seen until 2005 when the band released With Teeth. And he changed after The Fragile. He'd bulked up, become a lot stronger physically and mentally. The problems were not there anymore. The music wasn't quite as misanthropic, full-on and hate-filled and just really aggressive. But at the same time, he's diversified his music palette now. You know, he's making soundtracks and scores for video games and films such as, you know, he's done Natural Born Killers, Lost Highway. He did a track for Lara Croft Tomb Raider, which is called Deep. Very, very erotic song, ladies and gentlemen. Goodness gracious. Listen to the lyrics of that one. But then he did... I'm trying to find it here. I do apologise. The Social Network. Quake, the score for the video game Quake. The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo and Gone Girl. All those last 3 with Atticus Ross. Which is mainly pure electronic, but still absolutely fantastic. But the reason that I think The Fragile is Trent's masterpiece is because this album is the first time where you could hear that soundtrack and that score ability from Trent to do that and pull it off. But at the same time, the aggression, the pessimism, and the just downright downtrodden elements of what is 9 Inch Nails is still there. And it's incredibly diverse, because on the left disc it runs for 55 minutes, the right disc runs for 48 minutes, incredibly long. 23 tracks altogether here, and it's heavily consistent. You've got normal industrial rock songs, which are really easy to get into. Then you've got long and wandering songs like We're In This Together, Where Is Everybody, Just Like You Imagined. You've got really aggressive songs here, No You Don't, and Somewhat Damaged, holy shit, which sound like they're straight from The Downward Spiral. But then you've got these piano-based songs, these instrumentals, and they were totally different really from anything that was on Pretty Hate Machine and that was on The Downward Spiral. And these are tracks such as The Frail, The Day the World Went Away, The Fragile, kind of in ways, L'amour, which is utterly beautiful, Ripe with Decay, which has these creepy bug kind of, I don't know, insects, locusts or something, fluttering about in the background while this piano plays, and it's getting more intense and it's slowing down, and it's just absolutely fantastic. And when this album came out, it got mixed reviews because a lot of people, I guess, wanted Downward Spiral 2, but it's also critically acclaimed by the fans as well. It is one that divides opinion, but for me, it is a full-blown masterpiece. My 4th favourite album of the 1990s. And if you look on the personnel, the people who worked on this album, it is quite simply astonishing. You've got Adrian Belew from King Crimson, Dr. Dre, ladies and gentlemen, Paige Hamilton from Helmet, Alan Moulder is quite famous as a producer, Daniel Lorna, drum programming, synthesizers, guitar, I know of him, and just a fucking ton of people. Absolutely fantastic. But yeah, you've got ambience, you've got beauty, the piano-based instrumentals, the heaviness, especially on the opening track, which is the song I'm going to put in the drop-down menu, Somewhat Damaged. You can laugh at Trent Reznor because back then he wore his heart on his sleeve with this pessimistic, misanthropic nature of his vocals. But, you know, that I don't think I did say, but in the making of this album, it was actually produced at a quite desolate location on its own, and he was close to suicide at that time, pretty much addicted to heroin, and he nearly ended it all, but he didn't, because he put it all in this album. It's one man's struggle, ladies and gentlemen. It's a masterpiece. It's a Fragile at number 4, but I must move on because I am wary of the time. We're just over 10 minutes, not too bad. Album number 3 now, and I could go on about this one for a long time, ladies and gentlemen. I've been into these guys for about 4 years or so, and the music is so addictive, so incredible. I just don't know what to say. A whole list of emotions yet again. Schizophrenic, eerie, beautiful. We'll go on and discuss more as I talk about the album. I do apologise, pardon me. But this is the debut album from the band, but they'd already made music at this point. Released in April 98 in Europe and August 98 in the US. It is the debut album from Boards of Canada, and music has the right to children. It most certainly does, ladies and gentlemen. It most certainly does. I absolutely love that album title, because it makes sense when you think about it. This is on the label Warp, but also Scam and Matador. I think it was re-released or something a few times, I'm not sure. And basically, Boards of Canada are two brothers, Michael Sanderson and Marcus Eon, and they hail from Scotland. They're from Edinburgh. But I think when growing up, they moved to Canada, and Boards of Canada is some kind of, what is it? No, let me just see. National film Boards of Canada they watched as children. Yeah, and that's where they got the name from. And if you don't know, Boards of Canada are basically electronic, IDM as Wikipedia here calls it, which stands for Intelligent Dance Music, which is very pretentious. But at the same time, it is kind of true. Ambient techno, it says here. But the Wikipedia page here says the songs utilise a number of field recordings and intense sound manipulation. And field recordings are basically going out into a field, record, whatever happens, you put it in the album. It can't work like that. They must have swapped and changed a hell of a lot. But there are so many little nuances with this album. It is quite simply astounding, and I've got to talk about the whole discography of Boards of Canada, because I was listening to Geogade, the second proper album, but they'd already released 2 EPs before Music Has the Right to Children, Tourism and High Scores. High Scores is a good fun album. It's more dancer, but it's still got that Boards of Canada feel. But yeah, Geogade, I was listening to a track, and there were vocals at the end of this track, this female vocal, and I'd never heard it before. And I went onto the Boards of Canada Wikipedia, not Wikipedia page, but the Boards of Canada Wiki, the unofficial page for Boards of Canada, run by the fans, I think. And it said there was these female vocals, and I just listened very carefully, and suddenly I heard it. And I listened to that song so many times, yet I'd never heard that before. And that's what it's like with Boards of Canada. And if you know their music, you'll understand where I'm coming from here. I still feel like I can get something from these songs every time I listen to them. And listening to them in good quality MP3 or FLAC, or I bet on vinyl with headphones, and oh my lord, you will find something different. Just little nuances. It sounds pretentious, but it is bloody true. They are the masters of sound manipulation and just putting little tidbits of music in there. And on Geogade, there's people who think there's a lot of satanic references and stuff like that in the background, and audio that's backwards and stuff like that. Tons of manipulation, and they love manipulating the fans as well. They're not big on talking to the media or being out there. They're just all about the music, and I really do love the Boards of Canada bros, Mr. Sanderson and Mr. Eon. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I'm not sure why they have different second names. I'm not sure they're stepbrothers, but hey, I'm not bothered about their life stories in general. I'm just bothered about their fantastic music. The Campfire Head phase, which was released in 2005, was a much more melancholic a fur. But there are certain tracks that we could call melancholic, and Music Has the Right to Children and Gio Gaddy, but there's a hell of a lot of, like I said, schizophrenic, just really weird stuff going on, and at times really heavy and big beats as well. But the Campfire Headface took all that away. And then Tomorrow's Harvest, which was released last year, and I remember listening to it. They had a kind of a listening party live on YouTube, and I actually listened to it. I'd actually pre-ordered the album, and I listened to it, and I just knew it was another solid album, which was going to have a big impact on my life, and that was absolutely sensational. Really was. But this is the masterpiece for me. 17 tracks altogether, just over an hour in length. An Eagle in Your Mind. That's the second song on here, and it sounds like there's an eagle in your mind. You're hearing all these weird whispers, you can't understand them. Telephasic Workshop, that's another really weird track. But there are also songs which are more accessible, like Roygvib, Roygbiv, which is Richard of York gave Battle in Vain, if you would actually like to know that, ladies and gentlemen, the colours of the rainbow. Turquoise Hexagon Sun, 6010, which has, I think it samples from Sesame Street. That's all I'm going to say. Pete Standing Alone, Open the Light, One Very Important Thought. You know, I really want to talk about this album in greater detail and go on about it for another 5 minutes at least, but I can't. I've got to move to album number 2. But ladies and gentlemen, Boards of Canada, Music Has the Right to Children, and Boards of Canada's music in general, if you've never listened, please do so. And start with this album. Don't expect to love it on first listen, but let it work upon you. Listen with good quality earphones or headphones. Get a good version, a good MP3 version of the album, or whichever way you want to get it. And yeah, enjoy. It is a full-blown masterpiece. That's album number 3. And my favourite track on the album altogether is Aquarius. It gives me goosebumps. That's all I'm going to say. And ladies and gentlemen, album number 2 most certainly gives me goosebumps. A lot of people might think this is high in the list, but for me, in terms of consistency within a certain feel, this album is quite simply incredible, and there have been a lot of imitators in the 22 years since this album was released. It's a very important album for me. I got into it in 2008 at a very vital time in my life. It just came to me. I just downloaded the album and an EP which came out a year after it, and it was just absolutely sensational. It is the second album from the Seattle rock band Alice in Chains, and it is the album Dirt, released September 1992. Comes in at 57 minutes in length, which is quite long. And of course, Alice in Chains' first album, Facelift, came out in 1990. And back then in 1990, the word grunge, I guess it would probably be used then, because Soundgarden had been around for a few years prior. You got Mother Love Bone, you've got Melvins making music, you got Mudhoney, you got Pearl Jam coming up, you got Stone Temple Pilots, you got Smashing Pumpkins, you've got quite a few others. I like all those artists that I've just said. But for me, this album, it's got beauty that none of those other albums have. It's got most certainly sadness, but it's got a heaviness to it as well. This is no doubt a metallic album, and Alice in Chains, it's no coincidence that a lot of metalheads love them at the same time. But the EP, Jar of Flies, that came after this, it's got electric guitar, but it's a very, very melancholic feel, a lot of emotion. Jerry Cantrell and Lane Staley, the vocals intertwine in a way which I've never really heard before with any other artists or bands, and it makes me question why there aren't other bands that have dual vocals like this. There are some, but I don't think they've ever been as good as what they're like with Dirt here. You've got, let me just read from the Wikipedia page here. This is the last album to feature the band's original lineup. Bassist Mike Starr would be dismissed due to drug abuse in 1993. Mike Starr passed away due to drug abuse a few years ago. It says the album spawned 5 singles: Wood, Them Bones, Angry Chair, Rooster, and Down in the Hole. The songs on the album focus on depression, anger, antisocial behaviour, drug use, war, death, and other emotionally charged topics. Dirt is revered by the band and their fans as the album that defined signature sound. Do apologise with my glasses from this distance. I'm actually struggling to see the Wikipedia page. Now it's easy to see for me, but you might get the glare, I'm not sure. But yeah, this is highly regarded as one of the best albums of all time. But like I said, introducing it, it is so consistent within its main themes, which is, drug abuse, depression, and the intertwining of the vocals between Cantrell and Staley. Them Bones is a 2.5 minute track. I first heard Them Bones on Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, funnily enough, back in 2004 on Radio X, and that channel, that fake radio station, man, was absolutely fantastic. And for me, Them Bones is the alternative metal song that so many bands have been trying to replicate in the last 20 years and failing to do so. It is just so cool. The guitar solo from Jerry Cantrell is awesome. The vocals and the lyrics are going to end up a big old pile of them bones. Basically, just saying, what's the point? We're all going to die. Really, really downtrodden stuff. Damn That River, which has got such a badass attitude. Then Rain When I Die. The intro to Rain When I Die is quite simply one of the darkest things I've ever heard. The very beautiful Down in a Hole. Sick Man, which is yet again about drugs. Junkhead, which for me is the weakest track in the album. Dirt. Godsmack, which is unbelievable. Hate to Feel. You got wailing guitar solos from Cantrell. For me, Lane Staley is one of the best vocalists of all time, and this album is where his vocals are the strongest, because on the album after this, which I still love, I love everything Alice in Chains have done, the Tripod album released in 1995, his vocals are a lot weaker, and you can tell that the drugs were having a big impact on him by that time. You know, I think he was able to handle his addiction. Well, it was an addiction, so he couldn't, but you know what I mean. It wasn't ruining his life, but by the time Tripod came out, it had. And Mad Season was created to basically help Lane Staley, if you want to read about Mad Season, really good album. But he passed away in 2002, but I think the last anyone saw of him in the mainstream, in the media, you know, a picture or video, was like 1999. So that guy lived an incredibly lonely and horrible last 3 years of his life, you know. And to hear these lyrics and to know that they make sense and they're genuine and these emotions are genuine is just incredible, because usually you don't take them seriously, but they just wore their heart on their sleeves, and it was incredible. You know, Jerry Cantrell, he got it together. I don't think he's been on drugs for a long, long time. But Lane Staley and, of course, Mike Starr, they just couldn't really escape the demons. And this album is the album that documents them the greatest. Wood, Angry Chair, Hate to Feel, Godsmack, Iron Gland, which features Slayer's Tom Araya on vocals, which is just really bizarre 30-second track. But yeah, Dirt, Alice in Chains, my second favourite album of the 1990s. And my favourite song from the album that I'm putting in the drop-down menu is Angry Chair. And it is time, ladies and gentlemen, for album number 1. I'm going to turn a light on for this one, and I'm also going to be talking about it for less than 2 or 3 minutes, if I can help it, because I can see that we're getting close to 25 minutes. But I guess when I started this playlist, 1990s, a lot of people would possibly have thought to themselves, I wonder what his number 1 is. And a lot of people would have had certain albums which they thought were obvious that were going to be number 1. I wish I could say I've got something left of field. I wish I could say that I'm going to surprise you, but I'm not going to surprise you. But what I can do is justify why this album is number 1 and what it means to me. It is the third album by the English alternative rock band Radiohead, released in 1997, 53 minutes in length. Label Perlophone in the UK, Capitol in the US, produced by the band themselves and Nigel Godrich. Ladies and gentlemen, this album, what I got into back in 2006, 8 years ago now, when I was just about 15, 16 years of age, probably 16 I'd say, 2006, yeah. Got the ball rolling for me in terms of viewing music as something that isn't just for fun. It's about changing lives. It's about, you know, getting goosebumps on someone's arm. relating to emotions, creating a feel, creating a concept album. And I don't think I've spoken about concept albums. I mean, Dirt, what I've just spoken about, is a concept album when you think about it. The Fragile by Nine Inch Nails couldn't be seen as one. The Downward Spiral is seen as one man's Downward Spiral. But OK Computer is an album that lyrically still makes sense today. For me, it makes more sense now than it did back then. Of course, OK Computer is like saying, obeying this computer and agreeing with it, and basically you've got no choice. And it says here on Wikipedia, Radiohead's views on consumerism, social alienation, emotional isolation and political malaise. And I'm sure Radiohead are very, very big anti-capitalists. I'm not. So in terms of consumerism, I don't agree with them there. But everything else that is spoken about, I most certainly do. I mean, we've all seen the album cover. It's so good because it shows this kind of busy city where all the cars and all the things that are there are kind of washed out. You've got the traffic lights, you've got this kind of shadow of a person walking past. There's a tip of a plane which you can see in the right hand side, and it just reminds you of modern life, and how everyone's so close together, especially in the UK, in these humongous cities, yet how people are so distant and far away from each other at the same time due to modern technology mainly. And we're all hypocrites. I'm a hypocrite, I've got my MP3, I've got my laptop here, got social media, which I don't like, but I'm on. And this album was released in 1997, so computers had been around for a while then. I think Tom York and the band were obviously really worried about how they do change people's brains, they do change the way that we work as human beings. You only need to see it, and I do want to talk about this. I know I'm running way over 25 minutes now, but in terms of social media, you see people trying to take advantage of charities and basically stick the face where it's not wanted, to be perfectly honest with you. There's this young child or something that's dying, and this celebrity puts a picture up on Twitter, but doesn't really give a shit. It's just all about them, and it is just utterly grotesque. And I see people liking pictures of cancer sufferers who are dying and stuff like this, and I saw one the other day that says, "You won't go off this page without liking it," and I was like, do you want to bet? It's very vulgar, and it disgusts me, quite frankly. I care more than you do, and I think you see that, and it's very egotistical these days with social media. People will get one up on each other, and fuck each other over any chance, and you just see so many stupid things. People policing each other as well is something that I've got a big problem with. Just let me be free. Just let me be free. But there's none of that these days. And that's just personal opinions of me, the way I see things in the modern day. It's not very good, but there we have it. And of course, OK Computer is seen as one of, if not the best album of the 90s, and definitely one of the best albums of all time. Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, Ed O'Brien, Colin Greenwood, Phil Selway, they all do what they do very well. Phil Selway was actually on BBC Six Music, great channel, thank God they saved it. One of the only good things I'll say about the BBC, actually. And he played some really good music that I was surprised at. Some Nick Drake, some Pearl Jam. I expected him to be really holier than thou, but he was a great bloke. I get the feeling, no doubt, that I'm very different from the fellas in Radiohead. I'm a different kind of man with different beliefs, but nothing can take away the brilliance of their music. I think the band are a little bit past the best now. I think the King of Limbs, the last album in 2011, was the worst they've ever done, apart from the debut. But the Bends, Kid A, Amnesiac, In Rainbows, Hail to the Thief even, all the solo stuff, diverse, constantly changing, beautiful, dark, melancholic, and at the same time, the Bends and OK Computer have got some really good rock out moments as well. I remember Liam Gallagher saying something about someone wants to tell Radiohead what melody is or something like that after they released Kid A and Amnesiac, and I was just thinking what an absolute knuckle-dragging moron that man is, because those albums got melody all over them. Absolutely fantastic. And of course the band are seen as pretentious at times, especially Tom York. I've fallen out with Tom York over the years, but the rest of the band seem like genuinely nice blokes. Airbag, Paranoid Android, Subterranean, Homesick Alien, great Bob Dylan reference there. Exit music for a film, which is inspired by Romeo and Juliet. Letdown, which is... There's a part of Letdown in the second half which is absolutely astounding. I don't think I've ever heard anything quite like it in terms of beauty and music. Electioneering, which is the hard rocker of the album, it's absolutely fantastic. Climbing Up the Walls, Schizophrenia, No Surprises, Downbeat, one of the most credible lullabies ever made in music history. Lucky, which I don't love as much as other people, but still a great track. And then the song that I'm putting in the drop-down menu, the incredible The Tourist, which for me has this kind of melody and feel that'll have you swaying, and supposedly the band made it after they were in Paris and they were watching all these people who were tourists going around these beautiful monuments but not really taking the time to take them in and just walking past it all and kind of wanting to see something a little bit more immediate, if you will, not taking pictures and taking it all in, if you will. And it ends with like a microwave ping, and for me, OK Computer is one of the best albums of all time. Heavily consistent. Paranoid Android, I think it's been said, is the Bohemian Rhapsody of the 90s. Well and truly is. And yeah, it's my favourite album of the 90s. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wince when I see how long this video has gone on for. 31 minutes. I'm going to cut it short here. No one's going to watch this. But if you have, hey, you're an absolute G-star player, ladies and gentlemen. But thank you for watching. I need a glass of water. More gaming content to come in the future, but I have enjoyed these videos, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put them into a playlist, let the music live on. And yeah, I'm quite a critical and pessimistic person, but there are still great bands and artists out there. So check them out. Thank you for watching, guys.